Part 2, July 8th through July 27th, 1863. Chapter 7. "Where are you off to?" Rebecca stood, still in her nightgown and robe, at Annalie's door as her sister pulled on her riding skirt. "Sam's asked me to ride over to Daniel and Coretta's house with him so we could spruce up the place before they get back. Coretta's got her china and such over there, but none of it's been put away. And I have to clean the windows, and I'll probably go into town to pick up supplies to stock her pantry after Joseph brings his wagon with all that furniture Papa bought for them." Annalie looked up from her skirt. "Is there anything you need while I'm there?" "A composition book." Annalie nodded and looked at the clock. "The sooner Sam gets here, the better." She took her bonnet from the back of her desk chair. "Tell Mama I don't know when I'll be back. Before nightfall, certainly." Annalie edged past her sister and started down the hall, but she stopped after glancing into Teague's empty room. "Where's Teague this morning?" "I was up at dawn and he wasn't in his room then," Rebecca answered. Annalie tapped her fingers against her bonnet and then continued toward the stairs. "I was going to ask if he wanted me to get him another composition book, too, while I'm in town. I saw him scribbling away last night, and it looked like he was about to have to start writing in the margins." She stopped short of the stairs when Lucy came out of her parents' bedroom, rubbing sleep from her eyes. The little girl looked up at her aunt and smiled in belated recollection of Annalie's promise of the 4th. "Where's Mariette?" "Oh, no." Annalie looked back toward her room. "I completely forgot. She's on my dresser." She glanced down to Lucy's hands on her hips. "I'll take her with me when I go with the doctor." "Is he going to fix her?" Annalie suppressed a smile at the idea of Samuel Etheridge sewing a little cloth doll. "He might watch to make sure I'm doing it right." Lucy followed her into her bedroom, but huffed when Annalie reached around the doorway for the top of her dresser and found nothing. "I must have misplaced her. But don't worry, I'll find her when I get back." Lucy slowly nodded. "It's all right. I forgive you." She set her lips in a concerned pucker and murmured something to herself about the chances of the patient's surviving through the night. Annalie glanced at her clock. It was almost time for Sam. She ran downstairs and then out the front door after swiping a couple of biscuits from the breakfast table. One was down her throat before she reached the stable, and she popped the other one whole into her mouth just as she stopped at its doors. Teague stood outside Benedict's stall, stroking the horse's head. Annalie's face turned mottled red as he looked toward her, stifled a laugh at her puffed-out cheeks, and forced his gaze back to the horse. She finished chewing before she stepped into the stable any further. "You going riding today?" Teague said. "Yes." "With that doctor fella?" "With Sam, yes." Teague nodded and moved aside to allow her inside the stall. She started brushing Benedict's coat, but then looked over to Teague when he didn't offer to continue the conversation. "What have you been doing out so early?" Teague shrugged. "I've just been wandering around. Nothing in particular to do," he said as he patted Benedict's neck. "Thought I'd do it before it got hot." Annalie smiled. "Well, you should get inside soon if you don't want to miss breakfast." Teague only patted Benedict once more and stepped away. "He's a beautiful creature. How long have you had him?" "Since he was born. Papa let me have him. That's his mother." She pointed to the stall across from them. "Beatrice." Teague smiled at the horse's name combination. "She's a quiet old mare," Annalie went on, "which is probably why Benny's so even-tempered." "Oh, I don't know," Teague laughed. "We had a mare back home that wouldn't flinch if her life depended on it, and she birthed the most skittish colt I ever saw. Took me the longest to break him, and he still wasn't fit for anything except racing." "You raced horses?" Teague shrugged again. "Independence Day races and such as that. I won a couple," he grinned. "And that's no mean feat in Blue Ash, blamed fool, breakneck capital of the world." Annalie smiled as she fastened her saddle onto Benedict's back. "You'll have to tell me about them one day." Annalie looked down at the ground, then toward a whinny outside. "Your friend is here." He moved to the stable door to meet the young doctor. "Captain!" Sam grinned and led his horse into the stable. "Doctor?" "Good morning, Sam. I'll be ready in a minute," Annalise said as she finished fitting Benedict's bridle. Sam nodded and steadied his horse, then looked again toward Teague. "It's a fine day," Teague offered. "Yes. Perhaps it won't be as hot as the last couple." "I'll bet it was unbearable at church Sunday." Annalie glanced up to see if Teague's face showed any signs of baiting her, but his attention seemed to be on Sam. "We managed," the doctor said. Teague raised an eyebrow. "Say, are you going to the Hardy Ball next week? The glorious Matthew's going to be there," Sam said. "I don't know him." "Well, that's no wonder. He just got back from university." "Well, he was at university, then he went to sea for a month. Paid a schooner captain to take him out to see a whale. Now he's home to regale us simple, unworldly folk." Sam smiled. "He's always a terrible bore, but the food's not bad." Teague finally smiled back. "We'll see." Annalie led Benedict out to the stable and mounted. "Ready when you are, Sam." Sam followed her up. "After you." "I'll see you this evening, Teague," she said before nudging Benedict ahead. When Annalie turned the corner of the drive, she looked back to Teague and blinked at the sight. The pin that held up his right pant leg had fallen out, and the material dragged the ground as he made his way toward the house. For the first time that morning, Annalie remembered that Teague was a cripple. Wednesday, 26 February, 1862. The Army's preparing to leave winter quarters to break our dormancy in this war. Still no reply to the 8 letters I've sent home. My second term of enlistment is nearly over, yet as I have nowhere to go, I suppose I will re-enlist, if for no other reason than to keep Aubrey from harm. I shall take care, however, not to aim my gun at any rider. Though my family's regard for me has ebbed, I will yet honor them by endeavoring to preserve the life of the loyal son at my own risk. After sending Lucy down to breakfast, Rebecca locked the door to her bedroom, removed her robe, and crawled onto the bed to sit beside John. He turned over at the movement and stuck one arm under his head. She stroked the night's growth of beard on his face, but still he did not wake. Finally, she lay down in the bend of his body and pulled his free arm over to rest on her belly, taking care his hand was nowhere near her scar. It must have been this proximity that woke him. He tightened the grip around her middle, and she turned to face him. "Good morning," she whispered. He kissed her forehead in return and slid his hand between her face and the pillow. He moved closer to her. "What time is it?" he asked. "You slept late. Breakfast is on the table." "I have to check on Mrs. Griffin today. All that 15 miles out." "I'd much rather you stayed right here." "I know." John kissed her again. "So would I. But a doctor can't very well lie in bed with his wife all day, however tempting it may be." "Let me come with you, then." 15 miles? "It can be no more tiring than sitting in the house with not a thing to occupy me. I can't pick up a spool of thread without someone telling me I'll wear myself out." "Yes, but 15 miles there and back most certainly will wear you out. You must be realistic." "I am being realistic. That's why I want to go with you everywhere I can." John turned away from her to get dressed. "Starting this late, I may not get home tonight. I may have to stay at a house along the way." "All the more reason for me to go." "No." He pulled on his pants, stood, and walked to the dresser for a collar. "John," she said, and he turned and he looked at her in the mirror. "Turn around to look at me." He turned around, but could not bring his eyes up from the collar. Rebecca sighed. "After a battle like Gettysburg, they'll need you at the hospital. They're likely to call on you any time now to go. When that happens, it'll be the last time I see you. In the last few days I have you with me, I want to go where you go." "You are not realistic. You're defeated. I'll not feed such dreary assumptions by agreeing to an outing that will only speed your regression. To do so will be folly." Rebecca put her chin on her hand and stared at him. "Did you know that your speech turns cold and formal when you don't say what you mean?" "I don't want to argue. You're not going." He softened his tone when Rebecca nodded her acceptance, and stood to dress herself. "In any case, my involvement with the hospital is strictly voluntary. If you would have me stay here, I will." Rebecca turned from the wardrobe with her dress in hand. "You will go. It's in your nature to go. And I will die whether you are with me or not. We must resign ourselves to the course allotted us." She lifted her nightgown above her head, baring her whole body to him, and moved into a shaft of sunlight to illuminate the scar on her chest. "There," she said. "I can be formal, too."